we're excited to have Vicki Cartwright, who is our behavior support specialist here at the county board. Some of you may know her or seen her in team meetings and such. And today she's going to share with us about trauma-informed care. She's done a lot of extensive training at the state level on that topic and has a lot of really good information to share. So I will turn it over to Vicki.
Thank you, Karen. Just curious, anybody been here the last time I presented this? Either you weren't, or it wasn't such a big impact that you had. Okay. As Karen said, I do behavior support. This became very important to me in my job because as I work with folks with behavior issues, I've seen more and more how trauma has driven their behaviors, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. So what is trauma? Does anyone have a definition they want to throw out there? No right, no wrong answers. Okay, well, I have one. Surprise, surprise, right? Okay. When you go hear a speaker talk about trauma, what you'll hear...
The Shawnee bus is out front for unloading?
Be going right. No. Trauma is events that happen to people. It can be the abuse you hear about when you get your MUI training, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, all that kind of big stuff. Can be neglect. It can be losses that people have in their lives, and even losses as in changing caregivers, not having what somebody else has that they see and they realize that they have that but I don't have it, I want that. It can be, let me look at my list to make sure I get them all. Loneliness and bullying are considered traumas. The longer it lasts, the bigger the impact. Feeling like a failure. How many of our folks can't do what we do? Being labeled, ridiculed, one of the reasons why we got rid of our MR, probably 8 to 10 years ago, is because of the trauma that people felt when they were called mentally retarded. Bad professional judgment. When I do my other spiel on this, I talk about how and I've been in the field 21 years now, I know I had bad professional judgment before I knew what I was doing wrong. So, not here to blame anybody, not here to put anybody under a guilt trip because that would be me traumatizing you and I don't want to do that. But when we make mistakes, it can be trauma to our individuals. Okay? And then when people have these events happen to their life, how that event impacts them, how they experience that event can cause it to be trauma. Karen and I could have the same experience, but if Karen grew up at home where she felt loved, she felt safe, she's self-confident, she may that's no big deal, who cares? But me, if I grew up at home where I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel supported, I was always feeling afraid, then it could be huge to me, and it'd be the same event. So it's people's experience of that event. And then the long-lasting effects of how that affected the person. Like, Karen would have blown off the incident, but if I wasn't in a place where I could handle that event, it would have a long-lasting impact on me. So that's what trauma is in a very small summary. That's the word I want. So this lady that keeps interrupting, her name is Mary Vicario. She's one of our, she's contracted with DOD to do trauma-informed trainings. I've had a number of trainings with her. She works primarily with kids with very intense trauma. If you ever have a chance to go hear her in person, I highly recommend it. She is very, very knowledgeable. Her talks are very entertaining, but she's just really good. A lot of experience with trauma. So we're going to have a video by her, and she's going to talk about the hand ring. And what it is Dan Siegel, he's an expert in trauma, but they use the hand to help us think through how our brains respond to trauma and actions and that kind of thing. So we're gonna have Mary talk. Try to pick up, she talks fast, she puts a lot of information in there, but try to catch what she's saying, and then we'll talk a little bit when she's done.
Vicario, and it's been my joy to be a part of the Resilience Project for the last 5 years. Today, I get to talk to you about the hand brain, and I love it so much because it allows me to bring a model of the brain with me wherever I go, and I'm Italian, so Italian, so it's just a win-win all around for me. Feel free to do this with me. Between your wrist and your elbow is your spinal column, and something really important called the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve actually releases all of our feelings into every organ of our body. So literally, we feel our feelings in every organ of our body. And we don't get to decide when that happens. It just does it. So, in fact, those feelings are the feelings that frequently drive our behavior, especially if it's something we do very quickly, or if it's something that gets us in trouble, or the things that bring the people we serve to us for help often come from those feelings they get in their body. Not in those thoughts that we're so proud of, but in these feelings. The next part of our brain is the brain stem, the palm of our hand, and it's in charge of all the things we don't think about, all the things that keep our bodies going that we don't think about. For example, breathing, digestion, bladder and bowel control, which means that's not under your conscious control sometimes, arousal, the type of arousal that hopefully has you awake right now while you're watching this video, and the type of arousal that makes you want to do things far more interesting than watch this video. It's also in charge of how much information enters your brain. And if you're on the autistic spectrum or you have trauma, it actually lets in extra information because it doesn't know what you're going to need to be safe. And that extra information can become very overwhelming very quickly. In fact, it makes all your senses stronger, so things are brighter and louder, and they feel weird in your mouth, and your clothes feel weird, and get very stressful. And the other reason it can get very stressful is that all the information that enters our brain goes immediately to our fear center, which is the next part of our hand brain, which is our thumb. The fear center, also known as the limbic system, is in charge of 3 very important things that I like to remember through the word FAR. It's in charge of felt safety, attachment, and regulation. And it likes things to happen in that order, in fact. So when the information comes into the brain, it immediately goes to the fear center and decides safe or not safe. And if it's not safe, it keeps our thinking brain offline. But if it is safe, it lets the next part of our brain, our cortexes, our thinking brain, come online and give it a hug. But when it's not safe, it throws it offline. So when you're not feeling safe, it doesn't allow you to attach and work cooperatively with others. And when you can't attach and work cooperatively with others, it also doesn't allow you to regulate. And you can look like you're out of control. It might look like a choice, but when your fear center's in charge, it's not a choice, because what it has thrown offline is your thinking brain, which wraps around the fear center and has all those wonderful thoughts and all those wonderful things we've practiced doing housed in it. But when the fear center gets afraid, throws it right offline. And the only part of our brain we have conscious control over is our thinking brain. So when our fear center throws it offline, all of those thoughts we're so proud of and that we've worked so hard on to help us control our behavior, they are out of our reach. And if the fear center can't tell, should I be afraid or not afraid, it always errs on the side of fear to keep you alive. So we want to find a way to get a message from the thinking brain to the fear center so they can work together when we're afraid. And we're going to look at how to do that. So our vagus nerve and our brainstem think in sensations and feelings. Our fear center, our limbic system, thinks in feelings and pictures. And our thinking brain thinks in pictures and words. So you may have guessed it, the passport from the fear center to the thinking brain are the pictures. When we can create a picture for what we want, we have a better chance of getting a message to that thinking brain, bringing it back online so it can hug our fear center and help us feel safe again.
Okay, everybody got all that? A lot of information. That video
I get to
and
talk to you
others,
about the
Sorry.
That's all right, that's all right. As you can see, there's lots of videos on YouTube. Feel free to look her up if you want to look at that again. I've watched that a number of times just to like, oh, what did she say? Back it up.
Yeah,
What did she say? Back it up. Yes, talks very quickly. So, just a couple of things. Remember, we don't decide when we have feelings. It's our brain's response to our environment. It's not something we decide. It's not something that we control. And those feelings drive our behaviors, not our thoughts. When I got into this field eons ago, our way to respond to someone having a behavior was to go to talk to them and tell them all the reasons why they shouldn't do this, all the reasons why this is not the right response. But now knowing about trauma-informed care, if our brain is in that feelings mode and we're all worked up, we're all upset, our thinking brain isn't working. So all that talk is just like one in one ear, out the other, which makes sense when people just stare at you and they keep doing what they're doing until they wind down and then they seem like they can think. Now we know why. It's because of their brain's response. That arousal center triggering the limbic system. Kids who grow up in trauma where there's abuse, where there's not enough food on the table, they never know if mom's going to be home or not. All those kids, that limbic system, that fear center is developing more than the thinking part of their brain. So their brain is firing in that aroused state far more than they're thinking. And I actually, when I do my other presentation, I have a picture of, I have it right here, brain scans that they've done. And this is really small, but the bigger brain is of a normal 3-year-old. Can you ladies in the back see this? That's a brain scan from a normal 3-year-old. The small brain is a brain scan from a 3-year-old that grew up in a children's home. So there is a physical difference in their brain development.
The Bluffton bus is out front for unloading?
So when we work with folks where we know there's trauma, or even if we suspect there's trauma, remember that bullying, that name calling, all those things can be trauma for people. We may as well just assume that there's trauma and work with them as if, okay, they're upset, they're not thinking, it doesn't matter what I say, they're not going to hear it, they're not going to be able to respond because that's not how their brain is working right now. So I need to just try to help them feel safe. And when you go hear these speakers, that's one thing you hear over and over and over, is our brain will not function in that thinking part until we feel safe. Any questions on that? She talked about FAR in the limbic system developing, she called it FAR, felt safety. We have to feel safe if we want to think. Doesn't matter if we really are safe or not, we have to feel safe. And some of our folks that have had trauma, they're perfectly safe now. We have staff, we have services, we have da-da-da-da-da. But when they grow up in trauma, they haven't felt safe. So that limbic system is triggered to feel fear. So we have to work on developing that sense of safety. When people develop that sense of safety, then they can attach. Meaning they develop the relationships that help walk them through problems. She called it working cooperatively with others. For our folks who are so hard to work with, probably have had a trauma history that we need to figure out. And regulation, that is when we manage our moods, okay? Something didn't go right. Mary kept interrupting me. I could have gotten really mad. And some of our folks who have trauma would have blown up at that. But I didn't grow up, thankfully, in a traumatic environment, so I can regulate my mood, and it's okay. We'll get through it. But some of our folks can't. Back when I started, people blew up for no reason. Well, they're seeking attention. We need to ignore them. Well, now that we know more about trauma, we know that that's the worst thing we can do to them. They need to feel safe. Let's see. People, when their fear center is engaged, their thinking brain is not working, they're always going to revert to the fear. They're going to fall back in that site of fear, she said, to make sure they stay safe. She talked about the vagal nerve. That's the nerve that is here. It goes from your brain kind of down the side of your neck. That's what the one that, if you have a VNS, vagal nerve stimulator for seizures, that's that nerve. But that gets all that, it's cortisol. It's a brain chemical when we're stressed. Our brain releases cortisol. That cortisol travels all through our body. You ever been anxious? Ever been speaking to a crowd of people and it's not your comfort zone, so you're like, ah. Well, that's cortisol. That butterflies in your stomach, I gotta go pee, even though I know I just was there. That's that vagal nerve and that cortisol traveling in our body. So she talked about the vagal nerve, the brain stem. It responds to feelings and sensations. The limbic system, that emotional center, it responds to feelings and pictures. And then the thinking brain responds to pictures and words. So to get people out of that emotional state back into thinking, they're always telling us to try using pictures. Whether it's a drawn picture that you draw for somebody, or Mary does a lot with having her kids draw their feelings. And something about that drawing allows the emotional center to slow down, to calm down, lets the thinking part of the brain come back online. When the fear center is in charge, behavior is not the person's choice because the thinking brain is offline. I think that is so critical for behavior support reasons. It's so easy to take it personally when someone's upset and they're cussing you out and they're throwing stuff at you. So easy to take that personally, but if we know about trauma-informed care, then we know they're not necessarily trying to do this on purpose to bug you. It's their brain. It's how their brain is working right now. Any comments, questions? That's a lot of information to throw at you very quickly. You have any questions, any comments? Okay, well, we're going to move on, because we only have an hour, and I have been to trainings that were, I think the first series of trainings I went to was 6 full-day sessions. And when I left there, I was like, what did they just say to me? It was so overwhelming. So you guys are just getting a smidgen of the information out there on trauma-informed care. So please feel free to ask questions or catch me at the end or something, because this is a lot, and I know it's a lot. Okay. So one of the things they tell us to do for trauma-informed care is to create a trauma timeline. I think it'll stick in. Just put it right here. All right. This is a trauma timeline for a young guy that received services here at the county board. This is when he's born. He is now 21. Okay? Underneath here is the trauma that we know about from his file. The blue stuff would be considered the good things that happened in his life. The blue things are kind of things that are, well, maybe trauma, maybe not. This young guy would consider having siblings enter his life as a good thing, but there are many ways in which that adds to his trauma, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But all this stuff is impacting his behavior now. And if anybody from his providers were here, they would tell you he has behaviors. This young guy goes from 0 to 10 in less than a second. we're like, what just happened there? The really hard part is to reframe our thinking into this isn't behavior because he wants to manipulate staff. It isn't behavior because he wants to make everybody afraid of him. This is what he grew up in. He grew up in physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect.
And that is very traumatizing.
What's that?
I said that is very traumatizing.
Absolutely. I can't imagine what that young man has lived through. It breaks my heart to see this stuff for him. Hopefully, thankfully, as we work with him and we work through his 0 to 10, we're getting better at knowing how to help him through that. It's still very hard. He is very challenging. And I don't want to minimize what those staff work with. But it's not his fault. He grew up in this. He tried to get help. He ran away from home. He ran to Children's Services. He ran to a fire station. He ran to his counselor. But the system worked in a way that he kept getting sent back home, which is heartbreaking. He tried to get help, but it wasn't there. So hopefully as we in the state of Ohio get more trauma informed, this will happen less, and we can get better about seeing those situations and figuring out ways that work for everybody in the family. This was updated as of March 2019. Thankfully, I think we haven't had much red added to this, and I think a lot of that is because of staff. Going over this, talking with staff, everybody having a better awareness of why he's doing what he's doing, and us changing how we do things. So hopefully we won't continue to have young people start in our services with this kind of a history. Any comments?
So if they have that history, their outcome can get better.
Yes, yes. One of the things that we've been taught is the brain is neuroplasticity, meaning that it can redevelop, but
Okay.
it takes a very long time.
Yeah, that takes a long time.
Yeah.
But it can.
It can.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen a lot of improvement for this young guy. We've only had a couple major incidents in the last year. I mean, knock on wood, as I say. Where before it was like all the time. So yes, he's thrown a lot. Take him down. Slow him down. Yeah, it's a lot of work. So.
You mentioned that something about the mom and dad and the grandfather dying. So when a provider left, he associates that to the provider leaving as well.
Well,
And one leaves and one just left for safety reasons.
actually, mom and dad divorced. Mom remarried. Second husband died. It sounds like second husband was abusive. Mom remarried again. The second stepfather to this young guy is still in the picture, very abusive. We're at a place now where he chooses to not have contact at all with mom because he knows that stepdad will get in the picture, and that is never a good thing when stepdad gets involved. The thing is that when he does make attachments with staff and they're gone, then that can trigger the flashback of, I should be with my mom, but I'm not.
And you get into behavior.
It's hard because we're all people, we all have our own lives. Some of this we can't prevent just because of the nature of the system. I think it's just the people that are with him try to be there for him when he needs us. When I see him and I know he's upset, my go-to is a hug. Give him a big old bear hug, it's okay. It's gonna be okay. Let's wrong, you know?
I had a similar incident, and he texted me and he was like, "I hate you." And I'm like, what did I do? But now looking at this and looking at his, understanding his history, I can see why he was saying that to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I don't understand what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on, what's wrong.
Well, and people who have very intense trauma histories tend to end up with a psychiatric diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And essentially, folks with that disorder, they have this kind of push-pull with, I love you, no, I hate you, come to me, no, get away from me. Which, if you understand that the people that were to love him were the ones hurting him, I think it's easier to understand the I love you, no, I hate you, get away from me. And that's very hard. People with borderline are very hard to work with just because of that. 1 minute I'm good, now I'm bad, you know. 1 minute you want to be around me, now you hate me, you're calling me names. It's very hard. If you work with someone with that kind of history, you need to take a lot of deep breaths.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself, because that's the only way you're going to be able to help them is
Yeah.
by taking care of yourself too. Yeah, that's really tough. Any other comments, questions? No?
Does counseling ever help?
Counseling can help. There is a very specific counseling for folks with borderline personality. It's called dialectical behavioral therapy. And it's a very specialized kind of therapy. I think Coleman Professional Services was starting at getting people to do that, but it's pretty intense. And it's very hard for us as staff to do that kind of reality type of therapy. I had a psychologist tell me that you can't do it. It's too intense. You'll never be able to do that. We had a young lady who got that diagnosis, and her go-to was, I'm mad, I'm going to hurt myself. And she would do stuff that put herself at risk. And myself and the SSA, we said, hey, if we get her to be 30 years old, we've accomplished something. But it was very intense, and okay, no, you're not going to kill yourself. You're angry. Tell me what you're angry about. And it was pretty intense for a very long time. She made a lot of progress. We've had a setback, but we're hopeful that we'll get back on the right track and she can go back to being a productive member of society. So, any other comments? No? Okay, we have a PowerPoint. We're going to go through, and I have to do this now.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Minimize that. Wrong one. Okay. Where is it? Okay. Okay. Sharpening our trauma lens. This, I wonder if I can do this from
You
up
can
there.
reach.
This is a PowerPoint that was created by the same lady that did our video. And then another lady that, Sarah Buffy, that I'm actually part of a training group on doing these. And it's just a different, can you see with me standing right here? We're going to figure out how to work this from back here. There we go. Okay. This is from the Resilience Project. This is a state-funded project that DOT is doing. Okay, making sense of trauma. Okay, basically, I wonder why we don't have a whole picture. Okay, well, so these are supposed to be some myths. Trauma is stored in the body. Well, actually, this is not the myth part. This is this information part. So trauma is stored in the body. We talked about the vagal nerve and the cortisol that travels our body when we're stressed, when we're upset. Regulation motion is a practice. That's something that our brain learns as we get that sense of safety. Trauma symptoms are survival strategies. Our young guy here, his survival strategy was aggression because he grew up in an environment where that was used against him. So he's learned how to do that because that kept him to survive, to get out of that home. Perceived threats and real threats feel the same in the body. What you can't see is feel the same in the body. And then healing happens in relationships, and that's where you guys come in, is having those relationships with these folks who have been hurt, like people who should have been there for them. Okay, the body keeps a score. Bessel van der Kolk, he's an expert in the area of trauma. He's another one that has a lot of information out there. Bad memory versus body memory basically just means that this trauma isn't just a bad memory that people can just like decide, no, I'm not going to think about that anymore, and it goes away. No, this impacts the whole body. It stays with the whole body. It takes a very long time to get it out of the body. Trauma lives in the body. Healing happens when people feel safe in their bodies. I am not doing very good with this from this angle. All right, the fear center of the brain. That's what gives us the message where we're safe or not safe. Our brains are built by and for the environment in which we live. This young guy grew up in a home where everything bad was his fault. Whenever his dad primarily was angry, he took the brunt of it. So his brain is now wired for aggression and for anger. In trauma triangle, our brain only has those three options, which we're going to look at. Hopefully, no, we're not. Shoot. Hang on a minute. Let's see if we can get this done. Karen, it didn't do this before.
I don't know.
All right. There we go. You can see how tech savvy I am. Okay. The top of this triangle has the word victim. Bottom over there is rescuer. Bottom on this side is perpetrator. And what this means is our brain has these three options when we're in a traumatic situation. We're either the victim, we're the perpetrator, or the rescuer. This young guy grew up being the victim, primarily. There were times when he fought back, literally, and he was considered the perpetrator. He was arrested a couple times when he was aggressive back to his stepfather. So he got labeled as a perpetrator there. Since he's been out of that home, I went to where he lives now once, and he had a phone call from Mom who was telling him about younger sibling that fell down the steps. And you could just see it in his face. He did not believe that for 1 minute. He believed that she was pushed down the steps because of living in that home where he grew up. He became the rescuer. He was focused on, I need to be there. I need to help her. We had to say, look, it's okay. She'll be taken care of. You just focus on getting better yourself right now. So it was very clear to me, this triangle for him. So when people are being the perpetrator, we need to try to get them to refocus. And not that being a victim or a rescuer is necessarily better, but it may be safer for them. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's try it this way. Okay, I'm figuring this out. All right, so mood syntonic versus mood dystonic abuse. These are, mood syntonic is when someone is told that being abused is being loved. This tends to be why people get wrapped up in sex trafficking when they're kids anyway. They're told that that's this happens when you're loved. So everybody wants to be loved, right? So if that's what you're taught to believe, then why would you try to get out of it? And then mood dystonic is when there's fear. Force is used over the person. So those folks need to be safe, feel safe and empowered to get out of that kind of a situation. Okay, not a fun topic. Alright, everything an abused person does after the abuse is designed to give them a sense of safety. Okay, that's one thing that we try to focus on with this guy and anybody else we know that has abuse. Try to get them to feel safe. When they feel safe, then their brain can start developing that attachment, and then they can develop that regulation, which will help them manage their moods. Alright, reality is not to be real. Anybody here, oh, they're lying to you. It's a behavior. When I do my other spiel, I'm like, and this is why I end up on teams. People who lie probably grew up or are in now an environment where they can't tell the truth. The truth could get them in trouble. The truth could get them hurt. So if you know somebody's not being honest, try not to just confront them and like, you're lying. Not helpful. That will set them back into their fear center. Their thinking brain will shut down, and you might end up with something else you don't want, like aggression. The thing that they suggest is just to tell me more. Try to get the person to keep talking, and hopefully you can get them to the point where the truth can come out and they can feel safe telling the truth. It's hard to do because sometimes we feel like a lie is, about us, and how dare they tell me a lie. I wonder if I can pull that down. Sorry about this, folks. I thought we had this all figured out. Hey. Okay. All right. So a myth. She was too young to remember the trauma, so it can't be impacting her now. Well, guess what? It will because of brain development. Okay. A baby's brain is developed only half when it's born. So babies can feel trauma before they're born, and that trauma will affect brain development even as an infant. Okay, so you need to remember that. And the body keeps the score. Remember that trauma will impact even after it's over. He was doing so well for a year, this behavior can't be about the trauma, it's just behavior. Okay, well, he's just choosing to be bad. Trauma's in the past, it's just a bad memory, and can't read that with that on the scene. He's just doing this to irritate it. That's the old way of thinking. The new way of thinking is remembering that this is a brain development issue. There's a reason for this. Everything a person does is designed to give them a sense of safety. If they're being aggressive, it may be that triangle where they feel like they have to be the perpetrator, they have to be more aggressive than the other person so they don't get hurt. Okay? Just doing it for attention is a myth. Alright, old way of thinking. Seeking attention. I need to ignore him, so stop seeking attention in negative ways, and I don't want to reward this behavior. This one is a big one. We still struggle with this one. But the new way is these people are doing this because their brain is developed that way. They need to feel safe. We have to change the way their brain functions. So our basic need is to feel connected. Our biggest fear is to be rejected. So these people that are doing this attention-seeking behavior If we ignore them, they're just gonna escalate. They're gonna do something more, something bigger, because they need that attention. Part of the trainings that I've gone to, they talk about the cells in our brain. Brain cells die if there's not activity. So if you don't use your brain, you'll literally lose brain cells. So ignoring people when they're desperately trying to get that stimulation is like the worst thing you can do to them. Any comments, questions? Okay. She'll change if she experiences negative consequences. This guy here, a prior team was determined that if he goes to jail, there'll be natural consequence. He'll quit calling police. And I should preface that he got out of the home because he ran away. He told a story that ended up getting him in JVC. So the police rescued him. He got in trouble, but he was rescued. He got to live somewhere away from this abuse. So when he would get upset, he'd start calling the police on himself. I'm upset. I need to be out of here. I've got a bad temper. So a previous team decided that, yeah, he should have consequences. So they encouraged the law enforcement. He did go to jail. Did it help? No. It escalated everything really badly. We're a couple years out of that. New team, new provider. We're still, it's so much better, but it comes back. That whole jail thing, no, he doesn't have the brain structure to understand that consequence of I call, I threaten in front of the police, I get arrested, I go to jail, I don't want to be in jail. He doesn't have that brain structure. So it was the worst thing we could have done to him. Okay. It has to hurt before they'll change. That's the old way of thinking. If you do the crime, you have to do the time. They deserve a consequence. No, they're already hurting so much. You can't distinguish one hurt from another. There's nothing you can do that's worse than what they've already survived. That kid, jail would be like going to a hotel to him. The abuse that he's talked about has been so horrible. Okay, and the part of your brain is not developed to learn consequences. Alright, if she did it yesterday, she could do it today. Meaning do the right thing today. If you do it once, you can do it again. When you learn it, you'll never forget it. Everyone has the ability to focus on the here and now if they just try. The new way of thinking, cortisol erases that short-term memory. So even if they did it right yesterday. If they've been stressed, had that cortisol, it could be gone. And they literally don't have that memory. Trauma damage is the part of the brain that's responsible for executing action. That's that thinking part of our brain. That's where we plan and we process. Trauma brains are designed to focus on the past and the future and not here and now. Okay. All right, myth. If everyone around him is really nice, then the trauma will go away. I would like to hope that, but no, not necessarily. Time heals all wounds sounds really nice. Trauma has no time stamp, which they say the brain is neuroplasticity. It can regrow, we can redevelop brain pathways. It takes a really long time. But feeling safe and being safe are very two different feelings. So we have to work on getting people to feel safe. And with time and doing the right thing on our parts, we can hope that people like this young guy will have a better life. It won't be perfect, but it will be better. He's choosing to. Alright? The old way of thinking that all behavior is a choice. Your thoughts drive your actions, and if you really wanted to, or if I really mattered, you could do it differently. If it looks like a choice, it's being driven by the non-thinking part of the brain. Remember that lady in the video talked about that? That emotional center, we don't control that. It's the body's response. And how you feel in your body drives your actions. That's that vagal nerve thing she was talking about. It may affect you, but it's not up to you. So, just manipulating us. Okay? Hear this a lot. It helps her feel like she's in control. Manipulation is the least effective way to accomplish something. And I like how this says it a little more simply, someone only manipulates when they don't get what they need by asking for it directly. So if you know someone's manipulating a situation, try to ask yourself, okay, what do they need? And why can't they just ask for it? Are we not listening? Or we don't want to give them what they're asking for? If that's the case, what can we do differently so that they get what they need and we have what we need? Make sense?
Yeah.
Deliberately sabotages every chance. People with borderline intense trauma, it tends to feel like they sabotage. You get things going well, and then suddenly it all falls apart. We've had a lot of that. Afraid of succeeding. If they succeed, they're afraid we'll leave them. They fail for attention. New way of understanding the part of the brain they need to successfully complete the action has not regrown completely. They can execute the action fully, and then it takes a minimum of 6 months to regrow that neural network. Remember how easy it is to fall back into an old habit? For us, well, people with disabilities have that same issue. It's easy to fall back. All right, myth. If we could just get them to stop being so promiscuous, we could address the trauma. Well, that's that mood symptomic thing. Trying to make sense of what happened to the person. If they were told that love means having this free sex, then of course that's what they want to be loved. They want to feel that. With that attention, brain cells start to die off, and someone paired sex and affection in that person's brain. So that's where they think love is. Really hard to fix that. Okay, so what shift are you willing to make? I'm going to shift away from blank, fill in the blank for yourself, and towards blank. And maybe I'm going to shift away from seeing everything as behavior that we need to squash out and towards understanding trauma. That's a question that you can think of for yourself. Okay, now we have, what time is it? Ooh, we got a couple minutes. All right, we have one more thing, and this is another video, and this is just what? Okay, wait a minute. Did it wrong. Karen, I should leave you do this. Okay. This is another video, and this is by the other lady, Sarah Buffy, and this is about taking care of yourself. It's called Refuel.
You just walk through all of these little video clips and you're really inspired and you're ready to go. But the key I want to point out here is if our cup is not full, we can't put any of these things into practice. And if you don't use these things, they don't work, right? So how do we help keep ourselves full enough to show up for people in a new way? What I'd like to offer is a pocket practice. This is just a little goofy keychain. You can go buy these materials at the store. But for me, I like to have on my person things that remind me what I can do in the moment, what I can do if I have 5 minutes, 1 hour, or 1 day to refuel. Because if I'm full, I have greater sense of empathy and patience and ability to be creative with the people that I support. So something that I can do in the moment if I'm having a tough time is deep belly breathing. You're going to put your left hand on the belly and then your right hand on your chest. And you're going to breathe deep, having your belly extend further than your hand. So we're going to do that together here. myself or to a safe other person things that I'm grateful for. For example, I'm really grateful for the audio technicians who are helping with this training. I'm also grateful for the beautiful day we have here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm also grateful for C, cheese. I just love cheese, don't ask. By the time I get to Z, I can feel a sense of calm in my body, which again helps me show up for people in a safe way. If I have 1 hour of time where I can go refuel, I would love to go on a hike. Sometimes if I don't have this written down, I'll just mess about on my phone or call a friend and talk about how tough life is, but that doesn't help me feel full. Going on a hike and taking some deep breaths and experiencing nature, that really helps fill me up. And the last thing, God willing, I have an entire day to myself where I can refuel. I'd go kayaking. I'd drive somewhere and I'd get on the river and I would just enjoy what nature has to offer. These things are important because unless we're full, we cannot show up for people in the way that we really intend to.
Okay. Any comments, questions on that one?
All right, so the next resilience approach is this is for
Okay, I'm obviously not tech savvy.
This is a really cool.
He still wants to talk.
Yes, she does. They're good at talking. That was Sarah Buffy. She also does a lot of trauma-informed trainings for the state. So I encourage you to Google those YouTube videos. If you get a chance to go to a training in person besides me, someone who knows much more than me, I encourage you to do that. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for the work that you do for folks. It's not easy. There's lots of challenges, but we need you guys. You're all very important. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, yeah.